What's up guys, Maxim here, back again for another Academy FM video, and this video is going to take you through everything there really is to know about the EQs available to us in Ableton, how to use them, and really all the features that you have. So the two EQs that we have available to us are the EQ3, which is a very simple EQ, and the EQ8, which is in most cases the preferred EQ and will definitely be able to give you more precise ranges and qualities. So let's go ahead and give this a quick listen right here. This is just some random track. And then we're going to go and use these two EQs in different scenarios, and I'll run you through how to possibly use them in terms of best practices, and then also, of course, go over all of the features available in these two EQs. Alright, so first of all, let's go ahead and check out the kick and snare bus right here, and let's actually check out the EQ3 first of all. So the EQ3, as the name already implies, is essentially just a 3-band equalizer where you can't set the Q, you can't really see the frequencies that you're pushing. But what you can do is you can, of course, set how much you want to push any one of these bands, and you can also set in some form of range where exactly these bands end and start. So the way I like to approach the EQ3 is, on one end, I tend to use it more as an additive EQ. So if I do use this, I tend to boost frequencies and therefore also tend to use it with a utility and group those, so I don't just really hear the volume change when I do disable the EQ3 to see what I'm doing. So I usually like to have a utility right next to it in group so I can make sure that I can reduce the volume as I need to. And the way I like to set this up is usually start somewhere pretty low and isolate every band by itself individually and set it to where I think it works best. So let's go ahead and listen to the low band. So around here, I'm starting to get a very slight bit of the snare, but I'm still mainly getting the beef of the kick drum. So that's what I really want here. Let's go ahead and listen to the mids. So here I'm really setting it up very broadly. So this mid band is usually going to be the bulk of your sound, and where you usually want to have most of the low mids as well as some of the high mids in there really spread out. And I actually would use this EQ a lot more if I had 4 bands available to me, so I can really split up the mid-range. But we have to work with what we have, and of course what's left over is just the high end. So let's take a quick listen to that. It's just that really tangy kind of high end. And now that we've split all this up and we know where everything's sitting, so here we've got the lows, we've got the beef of the kick drum, a slight bit of the snare, we've got the bulk of the sound, which is going to be the punch and really what will translate onto most speakers. And here we've just got that sweet high end that's also going to help things cut through the mix. So let's go ahead and just play around with these different faders. So as you can hear, it's pretty smooth in terms of the way it adds and it cuts volume. So it's not very finite. It's more so a very gradual boost or a very gradual cut. And in this case, I just decided to go ahead and boost everything because I feel like that tends to make the most difference when I do use the EQ3, when the sounds are already good and I don't have to really do any cutting or anything. And like I already mentioned, cutting with this EQ isn't optimal because you can't really set the Q ranges and how precise you want to be. So usually you might also find yourself using an EQ8 before the EQ3 to maybe edit out any really ugly frequencies. And you might be asking yourself as well, say if you were to just boost around here, why don't you just bring up the volume? And the thing is, and this is especially true for most very analog type EQs, is that these different frequencies still have, or these different frequency bands still have different almost EQ shelves or curves associated with them, and the way you boost them, it kind of really determines, in a sense, the way the EQ curve looks like, and it'll always give you a different sound with boosting in terms of the frequencies and where you're boosting at which point of the frequencies, than just turning up the volume. So let's go ahead and this, I mean, usually I just tend to eyeball this. I'm just going to say that this is bringing the gain up by around 2.5 dBs, and let's go ahead and listen to the before and after of this. So not a huge difference here, but that's really what mixing is about for me, and especially mastering is just really those subtle little adjustments which add up throughout the track. So just a quick demonstration of how you might want to use the EQ3, especially I really love splitting up the bands and really dialing in and associating a band with a characteristic of the sound that I'm processing. So I really like the EQ3 on things like the kick, because I can dial in just the beef of the kick drum, then the punch and click, and then the tick almost on top. So EQ3, really interesting EQ, also really great for if you're mastering with just Ableton plugins. It's definitely a plugin which will, it's definitely the EQ which will give you almost the smoother kind of touch to the sound if you are in need of a lot of boosting or something of that nature. Now, on the other hand, let's go ahead and look at what the EQ8 has to offer for us. And I'm going to actually load that up right on the master bus. And as you can see here, there's some noise going on here. I don't know where that is from, sorry. But I also set it up where I have this as my default preset. So what I have here is a very simple high-pass filter with just a very slight bump almost. And the reason why I have this set is because it just saves me a few clicks, because oftentimes when I use the EQ8, it's really just a high-pass sound. And the way you can just really set this up is you can just dial in whatever you want. I wouldn't recommend it being too detailed. And then just press on Save as Default Preset, and there you go. You've got that, and it's quick and easy. Let's actually go and look at all the features that the EQ8 has to offer. So we're going to go ahead and switch to mid-side mode. Now, this is something which, when I found out about the EQ8 having mid-side mode, I was really excited in the sense that usually mid-side EQing is something which was only available to the people that had third-party VSTs, and for a long period of time it was almost like this weird kind of hype around mid-side EQ that it solves all issues. And my take on mid-side EQ is really just use it when you have to, but try to avoid it if you don't really need to use it. So The reason for that is because it can really drastically change the sound of something, and a lot of times you don't even want that to necessarily be the case. So let's go ahead and see what mid-side EQ can do on this track, and we're actually going to be listening to the sides first. So here I'm just really getting a feel for the sides, what's happening, and what sounds are really lingering around here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to definitely boost a slight bit in the highs here, and I'm also going to high pass just very smoothly and gradually just around here, maybe just to cut off any frequencies that I might not need. And this is just a very regular setup in the sense for mid-side EQ, where you want to make sure that you don't have any side information really below 100 hertz if you're working in the EDM space. If for acoustic music or very singer-songwriter type tracks, that might be different, but in most cases for EDM, you really want that side information to not be existent here. And of course, if you have tracks which have a lot of side information, you can go a bit more in depth on where you might want to cut and boost different frequencies. And you saw me here enabling the headphone feature as well, which is pretty neat, where you can preview the sound information that you might just boost and cut. So let's go ahead and switch back to mono. And what I'm going to do here with the utility that I have as well is I'm going to press mono, and that's going to make me just be able to listen to only the mono signal and basically only what I'll be editing here. So I can't really hear many frequencies below around here, even though there are certain rumbles which are shown here. So I'm just going to cut it off around there, give it a slight boost as well to just bring up the bass around that area. And you can go ahead and try out different high passes as well, something a bit more gradual maybe. Maybe that'll work better for the track that you're working on. And also you have to be aware of the fact that there are certain things as phasing issues or phase issues that do end up occurring if you do use very, very linear cuts almost. So this was a I think 48 dB per octave cut, and sometimes that can end up really just kind of messing with your phase, because we have to mention that this is not a linear phase EQ. So it's not the optimum for mastering, but it's the best that we have in the box with the standard Ableton EQs, and it's also very precise. So we're going to go ahead and just mess around with the different sounds here and see what we end up with. And one of the nice things about the EQ as well is if you're doing heavy processing like this, you can go ahead and mess around with the scale, because instead of having to move everything around, you can decide how much you really want of this processing. So it's almost like a dry wet knob, if you will. And we can go ahead and reduce this so we're getting something a bit more subtle, or we can kind of try and find the sweet spot in the middle. And the reason you saw me not boosting with this is because I really just don't like the EQ8 boosting, especially the high end. I think it starts to sound really tangy and almost fake. So what I'm actually going to do is load up an EQ3 and just dial in the high band that I want, and then decide from that point on how much I might want to boost the high end, and if I want to maybe use these bands as well. That's really just the highs and that like bit of air, maybe like a really, really small bit of the high mids around here. And I'm just going to go ahead and boost that by a dB, and also going to give all of these other bands a quick listen. So I might want to boost the mids by like 0.0 dB or something like that, just a half a dB. And a cool trick for the EQ3 is just to hold shift, and you can really smoothly dial in what you want to do here. And I think for the low end, I'm also just going to go ahead and boost that just a slight bit, just a touch. And this is not going to be too drastic at all, but we're going to go ahead and give this a quick listen as well. So keep in mind as well that I'm actually making all of these edits while still being in mono, right? And we're going to go ahead and take this off now, and we're going to give all of this a quick listen. Let's group these just to disable them, and let's keep in mind also that there's a bit of volume added from the EQ3, so we're just going to take that down half a dB since I'm taking away a few frequencies as well. That should be fair enough and still be able to hear what's going on exactly. So very subtle stuff, but that's really what I wanted to be going on the mix bus. And I think from now on, I might just go ahead and use an EQ8 for other things. Let's actually see what I did here with the EQ8 on the snare. I removed a bit. I think there was a bunch of just weird rumble going on here that I removed, and also took a bit out in this range because that got a bit harsh for me. And other than that, I'm not really doing much for the moment. I probably am going to edit some more frequencies in for the synths. Let's go ahead and take a look at those. So we can see here there's a bunch of rumble down there. Let's just go ahead and move that up a bit. And I kind of want to add a bit of more body to these synths as well. And I found a really ugly frequency as well that I'm going to just decrease a bit. And let's take a listen to how I'm cleaning up the sound just a bit. So that's actually cleaning it up a bit too much. Let's go ahead and just bring a bit of that in and decrease the Q on this as well, just to make sure that we're not really making it too clean, because sometimes you want a bit of that dirtiness in there. And yeah, I think that's pretty much just the main overview of everything that you would have to know about these two different types of EQs in Ableton, and different ways to apply them and how to go about the features available to us.